Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This hearing was called because of a possible complicity between Volvo and career employees at the National Vehicle Fuel Emissions Laboratory to create a faulty, if not fraudulent, emission study of gliders to eliminate competition from some small American manufacturers. Despite the other side's attempt to make this an issue about whether gliders are good or gliders are bad, or whether they're hurting the environment or whether they're helping the environment, this hearing is about an agency's violation of the public trust, and that's what we're here to try and rein in. And so, Dr. Miller, the Northeast States for Coordinated Air Use Management advocacy group, is it affiliated with other advocacy groups, lobbying associations, trade associations, or think tanks?
Affiliated in a legal sense? No.
Okay. In a non-legal sense?
We work with other groups that are common interest with the states and their interest to protect public health. Yes, we do.
Have they ever been asked by advocacy groups, lobbying associations, trade associations, think tanks, or whatever, to offer positions in an attempt to influence lawmakers or regulators?
We have been asked from time to time for those things. We check with our states. If they're consistent with their own state interests, we take all comers. I would assume if a constituent asked you something, you would look at it the same way.
Okay. Does it ever act in response to a request to influence lawmakers or regulators on behalf of those requesting assistance?
On behalf, you mean the entity asking NESCOM ask on their behalf? Yeah. We do not ask on others' behalf. It has to make sense for our states. We get asked, but we have to run it through our own states. If it's consistent with our own state goals, then we own it.
Okay, well, I'd like to introduce the email into the record from December 8th, 2017, from Dr. Miller to Michael Myers concerning the glider repeal rulemaking. Are you familiar with this, sir?
Yes, I am.
Who is Mr. Miller, or Mr. Myers?
Mr. Myers is the Assistant Attorney General for the state of New York.
Okay. In this email, you write, we've been asked by EDF if NESCOM could submit a comment deadline extension request to EPA. EDF thinks a request from a state organization might be better received at EPA than one from an environmental group. How do you interpret that request?
I'm flattered. Here is a national environmental group that a number of people obviously think have a lot of influence. And on this particular issue, they think we, as a regional state association and our states, might actually have more influence than they do.
Okay. What does EDF stand for?
Environmental Defense Fund.
Okay. Dr. Belzer, I have an email uncovered under the Freedom of Information Act that shows possible collusion between Volvo and the EPA on initiating a glider test, particularly. Have you seen the email before you related to Steve Berry from Volvo Trucks to Bill Charmley and Angela Collin of the EPA?
It's not before me, and I don't believe that I've seen it.
Okay.
Maybe I have, but it's not before me and I can't tell.
Okay, I was going to ask you some real good questions about that. All right, well, I'm going to have to skip those questions. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to include this article for the record. The article touts Volvo's efforts as good as new, and the process has less impact on the environment in remanufactured engines in Flim, Sweden. And now Dr. Belzer, Volvo Trucks is leading opponent to glider trucks, and they have said in their public comments that gliders are unclean and proclaim that the environmental harm that could result from the repeal of the Phase 2 glider provisions is inexcusable. Can gliders be environmentally friendly in Sweden, but here in the United States, not environmentally friendly?
I would certainly agree that the the statements that do appear to be contradictory. I think the right way to go about this is simply to recognize that if gliders are no longer available, there will be alternatives, and the alternatives are new trucks, used trucks, and retaining existing trucks in service a longer time. The latter two are probably going to have higher emissions than gliders, and so we don't know the net change in emissions from banning gliders, and unfortunately the EPA approach to assume away those other ways of complying is a problem. Now, EPA had the authority to regulate all rebuilt engines instead of regulating gliders, but it chose not to do that.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I see my time is up. I yield back.
Mr. Posey. Ms.